Welcome. My name is Sam Horn, and this is Clarity Calls. And I am so glad that you have taken time out of your busy life in order to join us. And one of the things we're clear about in Clarity Calls is that the clock starts ticking the second we start talking. So, to make this valuable and time well spent for you, here's a quick preview for our call, and then we're going to jump right in. I share how I got clarity about something important and brought it into my life now and not later. Then we bring in our featured guest, Andrew Horn, who is the founder of Tribute. And then we have like a lightning round. We have three inspiring thought leaders who each share their 4-minute story of how they got clear about something that really mattered, how they put it into motion despite some roller coaster ups and downs, and how it's affected their life. And then we wrap up with one thing that you can do to bring more clarity into your life. So I am glad you're here. And let's start off with something I got clarity about. A couple years ago, about this time, I got a very scary health diagnosis. And I called a 30-year friend, Dr. Diane Gerard, who's a psychologist on Kauai. And I told her what was happening and asked for her advice. And she said, Sam, when you don't know what to do what you know. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, this is what's called an SEE. She said, have you ever heard that phrase before? And at that point, I hadn't. And she said, an SEE is a significant emotional event. It's losing a loved one, having a dire health diagnosis, getting divorced, getting fired from our job. And she said, we are creatures of habit, and we rarely change our beliefs or our behaviors unless we have an SEE, and often they're dramatic and traumatic. And she says the point of an SEE, if it is to serve as a wake-up call to alarm us to our senses, is that in a world where we can't control everything, figure out what we can control and focus on that. And so I started thinking about, I can't control this diagnosis. I can work with Qigong master Chun-Yi Lin and hope that that helps. And I can do other things, but I cannot control it. So what can I control? And I came up with 3 things that I think I can control on a daily basis. And each of them only take minutes. And I have distilled them into one word. And you know me, they're all alliterative. So I'm going to share my big 3. And as I do, could you please be thinking about if there are events going on in your life that you cannot control? What can you control? What are 3 things you can do on a daily basis so no matter what else is happening, you're doing your half to do what Dale Carnegie said, live in day tight compartments, not regretting the past, not worrying about the future, focusing on what we can do today. Here's my big 3. The first one, well, they're all C's. The first one is connect. And E.M. Forster at the end of his life was asked what really mattered. And he thought about it and he said 2 words, only connect. Shakespeare said, be wealthy in your friends. And what I am crystal clear about is that if life is the question, love is the answer. And on a daily basis, I try and connect with one person. It could be going to Hero's swim lesson or his soccer game and just connecting with him. It could be texting my sister a picture from 50 years ago and going down memory row. It could be connecting with a friend and sharing an update. It's just that I know at the end of the day, if I look back on that day and I have connected with one person I cared about, that is one of the 3 things I can do to control what I can instead of focus on what I can't. And the second is contribute. In our very first session, we talked about coming up with a mission statement, something that drives our days, something that gives us ikigai, which is something to wake up in the morning. And my mission statement that I came up with my philosophy professor many decades ago was my purpose in life is to make a positive difference for as many people as possible while maintaining a happy, healthy, grateful lifestyle with friends and family. So contribute to me is to Pablo Picasso my gifts. Pablo Picasso said, "The purpose of life is to find your gifts. The meaning is to give them away." So on a daily basis, I try and contribute something, hopefully, that will make a difference, that will add value. Maybe it's coaching or consulting a client. Maybe it's writing a post and putting it up on LinkedIn. Maybe it's doing a podcast like this or Clarity that's a give back in the hopes that this might be a little life raft in what we deal with that gives us a little bit inspiration or a little bit clarity about what matters, and we do more of it now, not someday. So we have connect, we have contribute, and my third C is cavort. And I have a friend, Nell Merlino, who is one of our guests, and she talks about every day she lives right on Central Park in New York, and she goes for a walk in Central Park, and she's noticing the trees, and she's noticing the leaves, and she's noticing the breeze, and she's noticing the flowers. And most people in Central Park have their head in their phones and they're grimacing or they're texting madly, or maybe they're working out. However, it's all very grim. And she wants to be glad instead of grim. And so do I. So cavort is one of my threes because I know that all is right with my world when I walk. And if I get out every day and walk, and I am noticing and paying attention that is when all is right with my world, when I am, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, kissing the earth with my feet. So those are my big three. Here's my question. What are your big three? Don't wait for an SEE. Figure out your big three. Focus on them on a daily basis, because in a world where we can't control much, we can control our big three. And we do them on a daily basis. At the end of the day, we live in what Dale Carnegie called a day tight compartment and what I call a day right compartment. All right, that's enough for me. Now we get to introduce our first guest. And do you see a special light on in my eyes? It's because I'm a big fan of all of the people on our show. And this particular guy right here. Not only is he the founder of Tribute, which has been called Hallmark 2.0, not only is he the host of the What's the Big Idea podcast, not only is he a speaker who's been brought in by Google and by the UN and by MasterCard to inspire their employees, he is my son. And he is a walking, talking role model of someone who connects and contributes and who cavorts and who I am so grateful to share my life with. And he's about to share something he got clarity on and how it's affected him. Welcome, Andrew.
So nice to see you. I'm looking at the patio where we had Mother's Day dinner last night. So now it's nice to be on the show and to see everyone's faces. Thanks so much for being here. Shall I just dig in, or do you want to learn some context?
No, dig in, Andrew, is like, because you've had some turning points in your life where you left a very cushy corporate job, where you took a risk on starting a nonprofit, where you gave up your salary for a while there when one of your businesses wasn't doing very well. So put us in the scene of something you got crystal clear about and how it impacted you.
My moment of clarity came about 7 years ago now. It was my 27th birthday, and I walk into my Williamsburg, Brooklyn apartment. And I told my girlfriend at the time, Mickey, that I didn't really want to do anything special. I just wanted to have a dinner and to celebrate with her. And she was like, great, that sounds awesome. But when I opened the door to our apartment, all of a sudden I see 20 pairs of shoes that I didn't recognize. And I was like, wait a second, what's happening here? And then there's like a countdown, 3, 2, 1. And 20 of my friends jump out from the closet behind the walls, and Mickey had planned this whole surprise party with all my friends. And so I was like, okay, great. So we're hanging out, we're having a good time. Halfway through the party, Mickey jumps up on a chair and she says, okay, everybody in the living room. And so she ushers everyone over to our tiny little New York living room. And she put this screen up onto the wall. And she had a projector that she had rented. And I'm sitting there, I have no idea what's going on. And little did I know that Mickey had reached out to 20 of my closest friends and family members. And she asked each of them to send a 1-minute video telling me why they loved me. She edited all those videos into one montage, and then she hit play on this projector. And so I sat in the back of that room as the first person on the screen is my mom telling me how grateful she is that we spent a year building her business, the Intrigue Agency. Next up was my dad talking to me about how grateful he was that we spent a year traveling across the country. Next up was my friend Matt, who said the words, "You're my best friend," for the first time ever. And he had never said those words before. And in that moment, I broke down. I started bawling. And that went on for 20 straight minutes of the people who I cared about, who I respected, who I loved, telling me why they loved me. And it was truly one of the most impactful, meaningful experiences of my entire life. Because what it immediately opened up is after it was done, I went to Matt and I said, "You're my best friend." And I went to my other friend and I said, "You inspire me." And I had all of this appreciation and all this love that was just inside of me that I'd never expressed. But because these people, and because Mickey created the context for them to do it, I was then liberated to do it for all of these people. And it fundamentally shifted the dynamics of our community, of our relationships. It transformed my own sense of self, my own sense of self-worth, because now the people who I cared about loved me and respected me. And so I didn't need to care so much about seeking validation from the rest of the world. And so without getting too much into it, I was so inspired by this gift that I asked Mickey, "How did you do this?" And she said, "Well, it sucked. It took 15 hours of messaging people through Dropbox and Drive and collecting videos and editing them together." And so I walked in the other room and I just did some Googling. I said, "Does anyone make it easy to do this?" And lo and behold, no one had. And so I said, this makes no sense. Everyone on earth deserves to experience this before they leave the plane that we're all currently traveling on. And so what started as a little mission to share that moment with the world has grown into this business called Tribute. And this year we gave our 4 millionth video of someone who got to experience that same type of love and admiration that I was so fortunate to receive. But the moment of clarity really came in one phrase that we embody at the business, both internally with our corporate culture and how we treat each other as coworkers and also in the product. But it's this idea that, now I got to experience how powerful and how transformative it can be when we share our appreciation. And one day while running the business, I reflected on the saying that we've all probably heard on this call. You can even chat it into the thread if you want to, but it's, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. I see like 5 people were mouthing it on the screen. And so what I realized as I was looking at that, I wrote it out and I realized that if you just take off the 2 don'ts, the statement becomes, if you have anything nice to say it all. If you have anything nice to say it all. And that's a truth that I've been fortunate to live now in both my personal and professional life. But truly what became so clear is that if you have anything nice to say, there is no reason to keep that inside of you. There's research that shows that the bosses who express gratitude and appreciation are the ones who are going to be most successful and drive the greatest performance out of their employees and out of their coworkers. It's when we look at relationships, exactly what I talked about. This has been proven to happen in relationships, that when we share our appreciation for someone, they feel more comfortable sharing their appreciation back to us. So we add depth into our relationships. So there's all sorts of research that goes into why this makes sense for building strong teams, for building stronger friendships and relationships. And also it's just, if someone thinks something nice about you, if someone loves you, if you did something that inspired someone, they respect something about them, would you want them to tell you? Yes. And so all of us have the opportunity to create that space by doing it first ourselves. And so that's my moment of clarity, is if you have anything nice to say it all. Is that you will never regret sharing your appreciation with reckless abandon with the people in your life.
Andrew, one of the things I love about what you do is that it is clarity about, if you have anything nice to say it all. You also give a tip though, about instead of just saying, "I love you" or "I appreciate you," you add a word to that transforms it into this even more meaningful exchange. What's that word and what's the story behind it, please?
Well, what's fun is actually, so some of you may be familiar with Robert Cialdini, who wrote the book Influence, and he just came out with a revised edition of that recently. So he actually recently reshared our work on this because we cited his work and put it into a new context that he liked himself. But it was all based off of the idea that it is not our sentiment of affection or appreciation that impacts the recipient. It is our explanation of it. So it is not, I love you. It is, I love you because. It is not, thank you. It's, thank you for. It's when we take the time to qualify our statement of affection or gratitude with an explanation of it, the recipient knows that we mean it, that we're not just going through the motions, but they're able to more deeply feel the sentiment of affection or appreciation. And if we're saying thank you, if we're saying I love you, there's a reason behind it, right? Those statements come because someone had done something. If you're saying those things, there's a reason behind it. And so a way that we can achieve greater impact on the recipients when we're sharing those things, simply to add because. I love you because.
Mm-hmm. You know, and Andrew, you've gotten clarity about something else as well, is that when you founded Tribute, it has made a difference. It's the world's most meaningful gift. You've heard that from people around the world. And yet there have been ups and downs on the road to Tribute being a success. And you made a pivotal decision last year with the circumstances around COVID. You got crystal clear that you and your team were going to do something. What was that, and how did you get that clarity?
To which piece specifically are you talking about? There was a lot that happened. Our company 30x last year. So yeah, which part are you most interested in?
Well, there was an Inc. article that talked about
Oh
how
yeah,
you
sure.
and your co-founder actually for a while gave up your salaries because you believed in the company. It wasn't performing the way you wanted it to. So I guess this is a two-part question. First, how, if we are going through a roller coaster of ups and downs, how can we continue to believe in something in the desert of our dream? How did you have clarity that this mattered and you weren't going to give up? And then what was that decision that 3X'd your company?
Yeah, well, the simple answer there in terms of what happened this past year is during COVID, what we saw was a surge in traffic because you imagine 4 million graduations all canceled, no weddings are happening, people can't travel for birthdays. So how do we celebrate the ones we love? Tribute became a very important tool for millions. And we realized in that moment that it was just such a challenging time for so many that we actually decided to make our basic product free. And so when we did that, we just exploded with all sorts of press traffic and amazing support, which really amplified the growth, which was very cool. But the next moment of clarity about this, which really, before all this growth happened, my co-founder and I had to stop paying ourselves a salary about 2 years ago. We continued with the business because we had a vision with this. We both cared about this. We felt like it was connected to our dharma here. And so over the past 2 years, we just committed to going at the pace that we could, of just not stopping and making time for it when we could and not stressing, but just making a commitment to ourselves to not stop. And because I know my time's about to come up here, but we made a commitment to ourselves actually in February before the growth kicked off. And what we said is, what if we decided to treat our business like a great romantic partnership? And something that you've probably heard, an old adage, is the idea of like, a great reason to be with someone is because they make you the best person that you can be. They hold you accountable for being the best person you can be. They're your mirror. And so what we said about Tribute is like, well, we care enough about this thing. We've been doing it for so long. What if we just hold ourselves accountable for not just being good entrepreneurs, but good people, for feeling good, for being at our best, and just knowing that our goal with Tribute was not just to build a great business, but to be really fulfilled, integrated, happy people. And if we're not those things, then Tribute's not working. It doesn't matter if it's a successful business, but if we're not good people and happy with our lives, Tribute is failing. And that changed everything, because before we had this massive growth, we just committed to running the business in a way that was generative for our lives and allowing it to be that. And it does not mean that it is absent or void of challenges, but it just means that all those challenges that are brought into our life are opportunities for us to grow in ways that are meaningful to us and how we want to live our lives. And, then the business 30Xs, and we've been able to anchor into that as we've continued. And it's been really powerful to do that. So those are two things that have been really cool.
Andrew, as we wrap this up, it's like, and this was unintentional, I loved how this unfolded organically, is that years ago, you and your friends were talking about what you were looking for in a romantic partner. And do you remember the one word you came up with what you were looking for in your romantic partner?
I would say probably one of the most important ones was enhancement.
Yeah, that they're an enhancer. And isn't it interesting now that you're talking about your business being an enhancer too? And does it enhance the quality of people's life? And if so, it deserves to continue. And I'm so glad it did. And I'm so glad that you've joined us tonight. Thanks so much for your clarity, Andrew.
Well, thank you for bringing me into existence. All praise go to you.
And now we get to segue into Denise Brosseau. And Denise is not only the founder of the Thought Leader Lab and the author of Are You Ready to Be a Thought Leader? She founded Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, which has turned into Watermark. She co-founded Springboard, which has helped women entrepreneurs generate and raise more than $10 billion in funding and valuation. She has spoken for a variety of clients, corporate clients, and also does some work with Stanford as an adjunct professor there. And please welcome Denise Brosseau.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you, Andrew. I took a ton of notes already, and we're only a little bit into the call here. So very lovely. And I see a few people with tears. So I'm with you on that as well. I'm just excited to talk about entrepreneurship because I got the bug really early, and I just keep founding and starting things. That's kind of serial entrepreneur is really been my moniker over all this time. I started in my 20s. I started my first business that was a tech consulting practice that was kind of a side gig. And then in my 30s, I started the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, a trade association for women and women high growth businesses. And then in my 40s, I started a women's leadership company. In my 50s, I started a consulting and coaching business, which I still run today, the Thought Leadership Lab. So this journey I've been on has been long. And what's always been fascinating to me during all of that time is how many times people have said to me, I'd love to be an entrepreneur, but it's just too risky. And I always think, okay, I don't always say this, although always in my head I'm thinking, but isn't corporate America really risky too? I mean, your boss could leave, there could be a reorg, your company could shut down. I mean, I just think the risk is really dependent on where you want to take a risk. Is it that you want to take a risk on yourself, or you want to take a risk on another business? And for me, I've always rather to take a risk on myself. Because even though I really love that paycheck, I love the idea of somebody giving me money every week, I would rather work harder in a month and see the extra in my paycheck that I'm paying myself than giving that extra money, as it were, to someone else. So I think that has been one of the things that has guided me. But I do want to talk about some of those decisions, because I've been in corporate and I've been in organizations and I've stepped out. And I think one of the hardest ones was when I was in my 30s. I had come out of business school. I'd gone back in the tech industry to pay off some of my school debt. And I kind of worked my way up in the tech world. And I had a pretty high powered job, pretty good team that I had built. There was lots of bennies, lots of good things about it. But looking back, the biggest challenge was that despite being someone who'd always been healthy, every single month, it seemed, I was in another doctor's office. Like I just could not stay healthy. It was one challenge after another. And when looking back at that, and seeing other people that I've worked with over the years, it's so much of that your body knows first, right? My body knew first that this was not the place for me. I needed to move on. And yet I had just so many fears and so many doubts in my head and so many questions about, what do I do next? Should I do this? Should I do that? How do I get out of, how can I make this decision? And at the same time, I had co-founded a trade association that I mentioned organization with some friends from business school. And we had grown the organization to about 300 people by then. And we were kind of doing it as an all volunteer group. And we'd finally gotten to that moment that we had to decide, are we going to grow this thing in the scale in which it could achieve, or were we just going to keep it as a small non-staff organization? And my co-founder turned to me one day and she's like, you'd be great at running that organization. And I said, I love that job. But immediately the fears and the doubts and the question, like, can you make enough money in Silicon Valley to survive running a nonprofit? Can I really, will people pay the kind of membership dues? Will we get sponsors? All those questions. And so fortunately, I wasn't being pushed out of my organization. So I had a little bit of time. And what I used that time to do was to really try to answer some of those questions. So my volunteer board and we went out and we created a pitch, and we went to a bunch of foundations, and we managed to raise some money. And I had said to myself, if I can put half of my next year's salary in the bank, I will quit my job. And we did. It took a couple months, but we did put that money in the bank. And what I realized, what I also needed was an office. So I got someone to give me some free office. I needed to be sure that there were sponsors out there. So I went and talked to other organizations that we'd worked with and said, would you fund us? Would you give us a check every year? And they said yes. And so it just, we had to answer a series of questions. But when they were all answered, and I quit my day job, that was the day when I really think back on that day was probably the happiest day of my career up until then. And it was really about that clarity that I had checked the boxes and I had made the decision with the informed decision, as it were, to walk towards something instead of to run away from something. And that sort of internal voice, what one of my clients calls the itty bitty shitty committee in my brain, was actually a guidepost. All those things that were the fears were really guideposts of things I needed to do in order to get clear. And once I could get through those questions, and when I could make those choices in a proactive walking towards fashion, that's when things went really well. And I've used that same strategy over and over. So my invitation is to really think about those fears you have and really turn them into guideposts to give yourself the clarity that you need, because getting that buy-in beforehand, getting that potential funding, lined up before you walk out the door, that is really what's going to allow you to let go of that someday I'm going to do this, and really take that risk on yourself and create the future that you really dream of.
Denise, there's just so many quotes in there. Now, what was the one you said about, are you running away from something or running towards something? What was that exactly, please?
Yeah, to me, the right decision is the one where you get to move towards something you really are dreaming about and you're really hoping is your future, rather than running away from something that's terrible. And the truth was, I was feeling unwell, and there was all kinds of reasons to run away and just quit that job. But by actually being very thoughtful and purposeful about moving towards something and putting in the building blocks that were necessary, that's what allowed that next initiative to be successful.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. So we have talked about not waiting for an SEE, about coming up with our big 3 C's. We've talked about being an enhancer, and we've talked about, are we running away from something? Or are we running towards something? And now we get to hear from Angela Tennison. And boy, does she have an amazing story. I hope you have a chance to hear her origin story of how this got started and how she got off the couch and how she decided to get involved in the grassroots campaign and election of Barack Obama, how she became, and now I don't mean to step on your toes, because maybe this is the clarity story, and just going, you just said what I was going to say, Sam. So she is the founder of the Global Legacy Institute, and she is one of the most inspiring individuals I've ever met. And the reason is because she has faced obstacles, and she has just persevered straight through those obstacles. And let's hear your clarity story. Angela, welcome.
Thank you, Sam. It's an honor to be here with you. Thanks for having me. And as I always say, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. And I love that quote by Maya Angelou, because it reminds me that I stand on the shoulders of so many to be here. And I've always kind of known that, and I've carried that with me. In fact, as far back to being the only Black kid in the Gifted and Talented program. And even when I had another moment of clarity and decided to quit my job to make sure this Black man with a funny name became the 44th president of the United States. I had the honor and pleasure of serving him in the White House for 6 years and in the administration for 7. And at the close of the administration, I created my coaching business and went on to become a senior member of an organization. And how many people have dreaded a meeting at work for a seemingly simple question that you don't want to answer, right? And so I've had many of those days, but there was one day that became my someday that I would speak up and tell my truth about racism in my life in America. And that day was June 1st, 2020. And if you remember, a week prior was the day that George Floyd was murdered by a police officer. And I couldn't watch the video with his life leaving his body because the pictures were too much. And I had seen a very similar video so many times before, whether it was Philando Castile or Walter Scott or Eric Garner. And as I started to watch other people watch the video and watch America watch the video and watch the world watch America watch the video, I began to sense something that maybe this time could be different. And so the question I was running from was, what was your highlight from the weekend? And so as this week went on, there were no highlights. There were protests, there was crying, there was angst, there was a glimmer of hope, but there was a whole lot of hurt. And how many people dread Sunday night when you have to go to work Monday morning? And every Sunday night I dread, but this Sunday night I couldn't sleep because 9 a.m. Monday morning, I was going to get that question. What was your highlight of the weekend? About 8:10, I started a group chat with my family saying, what do I do? Do I go to this meeting? Do I act like I'm sick? Do I take white people off the hook? Do I take myself off the hook? Do I tell the truth that I had no highlights this weekend? Do I make up something? And the chatter in my head, the chatter in the chat, some said go, some said don't go. And finally, I text my boss and I said, hey, Ryan, I'm not going to have a good answer to what was your highlight of the weekend. And that was at 8:59. So I cut it really close. And he called me immediately and said, hey, Angela, we're not asking that question this morning. In fact, we're polishing up a statement where we are in support of Black Lives Matter. And we are putting our money where our mouth is. And so I was so grateful in that moment. A sigh of relief, a burden lifted, because I happen to be in an organization where my Black life mattered. But in that moment, I realized how lucky I was to be in such an organization. And from that moment on, I decided to put myself on the hook to help other organizations have courageous conversation about race. And so I ask you, what are you putting yourself on the hook for?
Boy, you know, Angela, I remember the first time you told me about that crisis of conscience that you faced when you knew that the normal staff meeting would be, so what was the highlight of your weekend? And you felt so conflicted because it's seemingly an innocent question, and yet it was calling for you, as you said, to either lie or to not answer, and there was so much confusion about it, and your clarity that you were going to let your boss know that that was not something that you could do, and then what that set in motion, the awareness and the activism that it set in motion. So I've got a question for you, okay?
Yes.
When you do your conversations with corporate clients, because I know that you come in and you facilitate conversations, and this is not a listicle of do's and don'ts, you open it up for conversation so other people can talk about these uncomfortable moments where they don't know what to say and they're afraid to say the wrong thing and everyone's kind of tiptoeing. If you had one piece of advice about what we could do in these conversations to have clarity about what to say or not to say, what's your advice, please?
I would say pause, take a breath, listen with the intent to really hear and see the person as they're speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Tell your truth and realize that the same situation can have multiple truths. Your truth is not the only truth.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have a little compassion because our truth is not the only truth. We don't know what someone else has been through, and we have to allow that to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, well, actually, see, I happen to know you have a lot more than that. Like we haven't even heard the stories about the Kennedy Center and we haven't heard about Dorothy Height in the White House. So it's tomorrow we actually put up the websites of all of our speakers. So if you're thinking, I want to know more about their work, or I want to know if there's a TEDx talk that I can watch or a video where I can continue the conversation, we will put that up on our Facebook page tomorrow. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And Meredith, I've been looking forward for people hearing your clarity story as the president of Performance Support Systems. You've created like a 360 feedback tool that's used by organizations around the world. You actually have your own podcast and you have books on this and so forth. So what is something you got clarity on that you'd like to share with our listeners, please?
Thank you, Sam. And really, it ties in with what everyone has touched on or spoken more deeply about, especially Andrew, when he talked about expressing appreciation and how to do that well. It just, of course, resonated with me. My entire career, since I left the field of education early on, after finding out I didn't do politics and bureaucracy, that was probably my first major moment of clarity. But the one I want to share with you tonight is related to the journey that we had. I have worked with my two business partners now for 30 years, which is very unusual. And so we've had our own ups and downs, as any business owners would over time, but our core mission, our core driver has always been trying to help people communicate with each other more effectively at work. The unnecessary pain and suffering that we have seen over the years from people not knowing how to talk to each other, how to listen. Angela, you just mentioned that so clearly and so profoundly, that if we just listen, if we just learn how to give someone feedback in a way that honors them as a person and supports them, too often people leave organizations because they have a boss who is not bringing out their best, right? Or the organization as a whole does not support them. And so we have created these products like our 360 feedback, like an online development tool. And last summer, we thought, we need to reach more people with this information. More people need to know because our schools are not doing it, right? People aren't getting what they need to learn how to really connect with each other. So we decided to write a book that really brought to light what we considered the top 10 communication skills. And as with any book, if you want it to be successful, you reach out to people who can support you. And one of the people we reached out to was Ken Blanchard. Many of you will know Ken. He wrote The 1 Minute Manager and many more books since then. And Ken actually provided our moment of clarity without realizing it, because he wrote, one of the sentences he wrote was, because of this book, thousands of teams will communicate on a different level now. And we took that as a charge. We said, now, if we're going to reach thousands of teams, we need to set a really audacious goal. So we decided 1 million books. That's it. And then Denny, one of my two partners, who's been writing for parents over the last number of years, wrote a parallel book for parents called Connect with Your Kid. And so we are working together to reach both the workplace and homes to help people learn how to really connect with each other. And we are so passionate about this. But as soon as I said one day at one of our meetings, I said, you know, Ken Blanchard told us this, that means we need to sell 1 million copies of our books. The three of us got so excited. It was like, that's it. We have no idea how we're going to do it. It doesn't matter. Right. And I've always been one of these, okay, let's map out the plan, get the specifics. And this time I let it go. I thought, you know, this is who we are going to be. We are going to be people who make a big difference in the workplace, where people really love coming to work because they know how to talk to each other. They know how to connect in a meaningful level without the judgments, the criticism, you know, all these mental things that we go through before we muster up the courage to talk to somebody sometimes, because we simply don't know how to do it. So this book maps it out. And so I'm just very excited about where we're going on this journey. It doesn't matter to me how long it takes. We are just on it. And that clarity, that sense of purpose gets me so excited every day about getting up and, you know, reaching out to people. And I guess my word of encouragement to everybody that's here is, you know, think about what is the most important impact you can have. And I loved what you said, Sam, earlier about one person. You know, if you can connect with one person, think about the difference. If you can impact their life in a positive way, by how you listen to them, how you talk with them, how you appreciate them, and giving those specifics. Boy, Andrew was right on target, I think, with that. Anytime we can lift up others, that to me is just a huge goal and a huge purpose for being here and trying to make a difference with people. So they don't suffer. They don't have the pain that comes with not knowing how to speak to someone else. Speak your truth, as you said so beautifully, Angela. Speak your truth so that you have the opportunity to have a dialogue and really understand each other.
You know, thank you, Meredith. I just love the river that has run through our program. It's so if you are inking it when you think it, so let's write down this wonderful quote from Annie Dillard. And she said, how you spend your days is, of course, how you spend your life. And one of our goals of this Clarity Calls program is to get very clear about how we're spending our days. And if we take a little something away from each of our speakers, hopefully we don't wait for an SEE that is dramatic or traumatic. We have a wake-up call and we clarify our 3 C's. What is your connect and contribute and cavort? As Andrew said, is that on a daily basis, we tell someone, I love you, or thank you because, or for. So it turns it into a meaningful contribution and connection with that person instead of a platitude or a cliche. And with Denise, I hope that on a daily basis, we run towards something instead of just away from something. And as Angela said, I hope that we pause and we listen and we have the courage to tell our truth. And Meredith, as you say, I hope on a daily basis we have some kind of goal with a metric to it that inspires us and excites us and puts the light on in our eyes. So we have this ikigai goal, this something that we wake up in the morning and look forward to that gives meaning and momentum to our days. So I want to say thank you to our guest. And I hope that their stories and insights have given you a little clarity on something, and that we live in day right compartments by having something that we're crystal clear about, and we make sure to bring it into our lives now and not someday. I'm Sam Horn. Thanks so much for taking time to join us. Once again, check our Facebook page tomorrow for everyone's website or their LinkedIn, so you can continue the conversation and find out a little bit more about how they're connecting and contributing in the world. Once again, thanks. Onward.